Flora and Ulysses, a movie directed by Lena Khan with actors like Ben Schwartz, Danny Pudi, Alison Hannigan, and Matilda Lawler is the little girl who is our protagonist. It's about this unusual squirrel, imaginary superheroes, and a troubled family. It's now on Disney Plus as of today, and we're talking about this thing. Hi, fellow Disney Plus watchers. This is Thoughts After Disney Plus Watch, where we review everything new Disney Plus coming out, and I'm glad you're watching. So this review is completely spoiler-free. I'm always very careful with that stuff, but I have to be totally honest. If you don't want to know anything, like absolutely anything, you can watch the movie first and then come back. But if you're still deciding if you want to check it out, be sure to stick around. And before we move on, did you know I'm currently the only review channel on YouTube that is specifically Disney Plus? You'll always know what to expect. Click that button if you want to follow along. Thank you so much. Flora and Ulysses is based on a book. Now, I haven't read this book, so I will judge this on its own merit. The very basic premise is this. A young girl finds a squirrel who has superhuman abilities, who she is trying to protect while her family struggles to pick up their lives. And that is all I'm going to say. The story of this movie plays out in a familiar way, in a feel-good family film kind of manner. But this film does things, I believe, that make it stand out. So what does this flick that makes it distinctively good? Well, it starts with the visual tone and style. And I usually start with the visual aspects of a film because I always feel that's a good starting point. So this story takes place around this girl who has so much imagination, and she's the one to carry the story. So I'm glad the film went for a very colorful and playful color palette and look. The neighborhood is very cozy feeling, very vibrant, and that brings me to this. The home of Flora, where she lives with her mother, is very, brown, vintage looking and dusty, like almost the exact opposite of what the outside world is looking like, at least to this girl in this movie. This is established in the very first few scenes. This home and the way it is, her mother likes it this way and even decides to write her novel on an old typewriter. So it is established very early on that Flora's mother is totally not in touch with her daughter, like in a totally different world, I should say. No shots, by the way, at vintage designs, nothing wrong with that, but it was clear that the design of the home was very deliberately chosen to contrast the world of Flora. The cast in this movie is very good, except for maybe Danny Pudi. I really like that actor in the show Community, for instance, but here he just doesn't have a lot to do except run around and be the villain. It's totally the fault of the script, but I found his character instantly forgettable with the most generic police sheriff-like clothing and there wasn't anything there except him being a roadblock for the story to overcome. But the rest of the cast, they were terrific. It really surprised me how much I liked the little girl and her characterization. In the first act of the movie, the script gives her some weird lines to deliver that are very grown-up language and fancy talk on purpose. I feel like I need to explain it more, but I don't want to get into specifics. I don't know what the idea was there, but you'll see. It's not something that is a story vehicle in any way, but the script makes her fancy talk for a few moments. Not really sure what the point was, but still, she was a nice, cute character. And the more this film progresses, the more I started to really like Flora. She works as a protagonist, and Ben Schwartz's character is my favorite. I mean, man, I cannot resist that weird smile of his. It always worked in Parks and Recreation. He's great in that Netflix show Space Force also. But in this movie, he's the best I've ever seen him. The biggest laughs come from his character. But the most touching moments too. Well, except for one amazing short scene between Alison Hannigan's character and the squirrel, but I won't go into the specifics again. The themes of this movie, the themes in this movie, they work. Most of them very familiar, but still effective in their own right. I do have to say that I felt the story concluded at the end of Act 2. Not really, the plot still got going, but took an expected turn and the movie turned a little generic there. I mean, what played out had to play out due to what was built up, but the thematic story, and I mean the real story, ended, and then some plot needed to be resolved. It was maybe a little less interwoven than would have been perfect. Don't get me wrong, the script is pretty decent, but it was just too clear for me. All the characters got their concluding moment, their closure, and then some stuff needed to happen. So I was already satisfied with what the movie was telling us in its story, and then some plot played out. So yeah, pop culture references. The movie is not full of them, but they are there and they're nice. Particularly an Imperial March doorbell tune and some Marvel characters are mentioned. I mean, nice stuff like that to have in a movie about heroics and superheroes. This movie is ultimately about family. This movie is about having hope, heroics, all that stuff. I mean, that's what you expect, right? I mean, if you've watched the trailer. The movie is also about bringing inspiration, uniting people, and seeing a hero in everyone, even if they've made great mistakes. The movie got those messages across without overbearing it too much, I believe. Some monologues the character of Flora delivers are a bit generic though. There's also some little short flashbacks used that are totally generic and not needed. I mean, the colors were blurry and washed in those flashbacks, like typical flashback stuff. It didn't add anything to the story because what was told with it could have been communicated by the actors really simply. It wasn't a big deal, and there are only a few of them. So it isn't a perfect movie, but it is a very nice and playful looking film with a great cast, nice humor, some laugh out loud moments, some nice pop culture references. The last act could have been a bit shorter or more interwoven with the themes of the film it was going for. That could have been a bit better. Some generic lines or flashback moments. It didn't ruin the fun, but it could have been avoided and the film would be just that little more sophisticated as a result. But I would recommend this one. It's a good time. I'm thinking about wrapping this up. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. Of course, I'm going to cover WandaVision today, so my thoughts will be up very, very soon. If you're interested in more thoughts on Disney+, there are some in the description or on the right of your screen. We're covering Falcon and the Winter Soldier and of course the Mighty Ducks Game Changers next month, so be sure to be back for that. For now, have a wonderful day and see ya!